how different bodybuilding is today compared to your era. Like we talked about how you guys would go to the beach between sessions. You'd be in a gym for 3 hours a day.
I didn't do this deliberately, but I noticed what was happening is as I got in better shape, I was tending to stretching out the space between meals. And he's having breakfast and he said, "Frank, I'll tell you the secret of nutrition." I said, "All right, let's hear it." Not really eating until I'm hungry. So my motto became stay hungry longer, because when you're hungry, you're in the fat burning mode.
I think now what I notice is with my fans when they ask me questions, I'm sure you get it too, everyone overthinks. They're looking for the perfect training program, the perfect retracting the shoulder blades, or perfect foot position. Like, is there even a perfect? There is no perfect blueprint, to give anyone. It just comes through repetition. Like, what's your take on that when everyone's over-analyzing? There's too much information out there.
It's sort of like they're coming from textbook to gym. It's more about discovering what gives you a pump. I mean, you just got to focus on doing so you get the pump, the blood engorging an area and where you intended it to be. And if you did, you've done it right. But if you're always thinking, I got an email about, what about when I'm doing incline presses? Should I tense my scapula? Should I? No, just do the exercise. Follow the form of the exercise and everything will work out the way it needs.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know. I just feel like too much information equals bad. But when you're just in the gym enjoying yourself, feeling the pump, that's where the groove and all the magic happens. I mean, we spoke about it yesterday, the state of bodybuilding, how different bodybuilding is today compared to your era. Like we talked about how you guys would go to the beach between sessions. You'd be in a gym for 3 hours a day and then go back for an hour or two later, and I don't see that anyone does that anymore. And I think that's a big difference in the physiques, the muscle bellies and the overall look. And many people would say it was better back then. What do you think is a factor that contributes to that?
I think for one thing, there are fewer people doing it then, and so we were more selective. And yeah, we'd go to the gym and we would maybe train for an hour and a half or 2 hours, and then get lunch, and then go to the beach, and then come back and go again in the late afternoon. And I spent my summers doing that.
Now, how many times were you eating a day? Like, let's say when you and Arnold were training together, like, were you guys eating every 2.5, 3 hours? Or what was your take on food back then?
I found myself doing certain things, and one of them was not eating that much. In other words, I didn't do this deliberately, but I noticed what was happening is as I got in better shape, I was tending to stretching out the space between meals and not really eating until I'm hungry. So my motto became stay hungry longer, because when you're hungry, you're in the fat burning mode. First, your glucose goes, then your glycogen stored in your muscles and liver, that gets burned up, and then you get into burning body fat, and that's good for a good 8 hours, and not until that point is when you start burning muscle, after about not eating for 8 to 10 hours even. And so you don't have to worry, just by eating every 2 hours, you don't have to worry about losing muscle mass. It's not gonna happen. You're gonna lose fat. But you may get smaller, you might not have as much energy, but still, if you go by your appearance, and that's what I always focused on, is don't go by these things that aren't the real thing. What the real thing is what you look like. And so I took a lot of photos, lots of photos, and I judged what I looked like and what I still had to do on I was looking at in the photos. I saw weak areas, I saw good points. Some of the shots were really, really good, but I wanted to learn to see what I look like to other people. I think that's the thing. And I always advocated people take photos of themselves.
That's one of the biggest contrasts I see is the workout intensity and duration was longer. The meal frequency was shorter. It wasn't, for you, it wasn't a lot of food. What about guys like Arnold? Were they eating excessive amounts of food? Were they binge eating? Were they eating every 2 hours, 3 hours? Or what were they doing?
I think about this episode, it was like early 70s. It might have even been 1969 or 1970. We were at Denny's having breakfast, and he said, "Frank, I'll tell you the secret of nutrition." I said, "All right, let's hear it." He says, "It doesn't matter what you eat, just so you eat a lot of it." And I think, whoa, that doesn't work for me. I always worked, I watched my carbohydrate intake is what I did all those years. I would basically get 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, a half a gram of carbs. So it'd be like if I weighed 200 grams of protein every day, 100 grams of carbs, enough, mainly before my workout, so I'd have enough energy to get a pump. And then my fat intake was moderately, pretty low. I always eat more protein than carbs. And good fats, not so much saturated fats, mostly things like olive oil, monounsaturated oils, almond oil,
So what was your typical breakfast? Let's say morning of the Olympia. What did you eat?
Up at 6. And I'd have a breakfast, I'd have maybe 3 soft-boiled eggs or poached eggs with about 8 ounces of calf's liver and baked yam.
Calf's liver?
Calf's liver and baked yam. And that stayed with me for a while. And then after I let that digest, and then about every 45 minutes I would have about a bunch of amino acids with a slice of baked yam. And I'd do that every 45 minutes right up to the show. Right up to the show, and I'd go over there. And the other thing was too, is I wanted to make sure that I was stimulus hungry for weights, because I didn't train. If the show was Saturday, the last workout I got might have been Tuesday. I was posing a lot, because it's about posing. It was posing. But really, I wasn't working out that much with the weights. But then when I pumped up immediately when I went backstage, immediately. And I never did a lot of pumping up backstage. I remember guys like, I remember Sergio Oliva when he was competing. He worked out, he got like 2 hours workout backstage. And he'd go out all blow it up, and then as he stood there, just deflate. And I never did that. I just did a little bit and then walk out and pump up when you're posing.
One of the key takeaways that I learned when I first met you, I remember you told me one piece of advice. You said, don't get big too fast. So you said, don't get big too fast. And, I think what you meant by then was, don't lift heavy, don't get injured, because once you get injured, you could get re-injured again. That's going to hinder your performance. So don't lift too heavy. And also don't get too heavy, because the midsection actually gets heavier. And this is a question that many people ask me, how do you keep a tight waist? Like, what do you have to say about people that are more concerned with, hey, how do I get my waist smaller? Is there anything they could do?
Well, I think don't eat a lot of food at once. Don't stretch your gut out, and don't eat a lot, and then do a lot of ab work. Now, you've done remarkably well, even at this heavier body weight. You're at like 225. You still have a tiny waist. Yeah. It's amazing. You're holding a lot of your weight in your thighs right now, I think. Yeah. But basically, that's the thing, is take your time. It's hard though. It's hard for somebody, younger guys especially. They want results fast.
But also, I think that getting big too fast is actually going to hurt the physique. Like we've both talked about it. The best we've looked is at the lower weight, not necessarily the higher weight. Actually, the higher we got in weight, on stage weight and muscle, it kind of just throws off the line. So I think it is, like we talked about, it's important just to, make steady, slow improvements rather than go jump 10, 15 pounds in muscle, in 5 months' time or something, because we tend to be asking a lot of questions, and sometimes we get asked questions to the wrong people, and they have the wrong advice for us. Hey, how do I do better? Oh, well, you gotta get bigger. Hey, how do I go better? Well, you gotta lift heavier, put on more muscle, and that can lead to injury or ruining.